The last vlog of 2023, we're going to analyze 10 hands that I played at 1-2 live at the Empire Casino. Let's jump straight into it.
And we start with a hand that I always like to see, pocket aces. We raise it up under the gun. We have an aggro reg in the cutoff who 3-bets us to 35. He loves to do that, especially against me. And a loose recreational player in the small blind cold calls his 3-bet, folds back to us, and I think this is the easiest 4-bet ever here, obviously against the cutoff, the aggressive reg, and also with a loose recreational player in there with his dead money. So I go for 145, and both players think for a while and then call my bet. The flop comes king, king, 3. It's not great because everyone could have a king. I probably have most kings here in my 4-betting range, so I could go for a continuation bet here once the small blind checks to me, but I decide to play this a bit slower and just see what the action is like, because if the cutoff bets after I check and the small blind raises, maybe there is an argument for me to just fold my aces, so at least I see a bit what the others do if I check here. So I check and the cutoff checks behind. Now there is a total brick on the turn, and the small blind now leads out for 90 into a pot of 437. So I don't think this is very strong, but because look at this, we have less than one SPR here going into this turn, so there is no need to fast play this, so I decided to just call behind, hopefully get the cutoff to call with something like queens or jacks or so. But unfortunately he folds, and on the river now the small blind checks to me, thus indicating that he almost never has a king here. We definitely have the best hand, and we hope that he has queens, jacks, 10, something like that, and he can find some sort of a call. I have to shove here because I only have 250 behind, and the small blind tanks for a while, and unfortunately he folds. And now we're moving to the favorite hand of this session. There is a limp. We make it 10 with ace queen suited. The big blind calls and the limper gets out of the way. Ace a6 with a flush draw, and now the very weak big blind leads out for 10. I was thinking of raising it up here, but I thought it's better to keep his merged range in here rather than raising and then possibly folding out some hands like pocket 8, pocket 9, something like that. So I decided to just call. Unfortunately, we do get the flush on the turn, and he now makes it 10 into 43. So now I'm pretty sure that this is actually a quite weak hand, maybe another ace, a weaker ace, but most likely not a flush. So I just call again, and now the river is great because it gives us top full house, so we have the nuts unless he has exactly pocket kings. So he now leads out again. He bets 25 into a pot of 63, and there is nothing else for me to do than to jam. And he now goes into the tank, and he thinks and he thinks and he thinks. And I was thinking, like, well, what could he have to think for so long? Maybe a king? Like, you wouldn't think with an ace, and he wouldn't think with anything else than the king, or maybe pocket 6 is like, but I can't see anything else. Like maybe a flush, but I kind of ruled that out on the turn. So in the end, he calls, and I see this hand, pocket jacks. I mean, how on earth calling pre-flop, then leading out on ace a6, then betting again when the king comes, then betting again when the board reads ace, ace, king, king, 6, and then calling my jam? Well, yeah, happy birthday to me, I guess. Thank you. And now off to my least favorite hand, low jack, an unknown makes it 7. I raise it up to 25 with king jack of hearts in the hijack. The fish in the small blind cold calls my 3-bet, and the original raiser also joins the party. King 6 deuce with 2 hearts, beautiful flop for me, not only top pair but also flush draw. It checks to me, I decide to go for a third pot here, definitely able to get some value, hopefully even from a weaker flush draw, but definitely some pocket pairs in between, or possibly a weaker king, although maybe only king 10 really. Both players call, so now I would have gone into a more defensive mode unless the flush hits, and the flush hits, so now we're going for pure value, betting a third again because I don't want to bet too big. This is kind of a bit of a mergy bet here. I would potentially also continue betting a set in this case, although probably against 2 players not so much, so I could have made it bigger really and being a bit more polarized, but I still think it's okay. Now the small blind gets out of the way, but the low jack calls, and the river now pairs the king, which is a bit annoying because I might lose a customer if he has, well, either a bluff catcher or a weaker flush, but I still think I have to jam here. There is no other play for me with only 175 left in the low jack stack, so I jam, and he snap calls, and he snaps me off with a nut flush. I was surprised to see this from him on the river because I would have expected him to check raise the turn with a nut flush, because it's not advisable to let other people bluff into you, because triple barrel bluffs, especially in a 3-bet pot in live poker, are very rare. So I think he should have check raised the turn here, but yeah, as I say, I was very surprised to see the way how he played it, and there was no way for me to get away from this hand with a king high flush anyway. This was a very interesting hand here. Low jack makes it 10. I call in the hijack because I have a few very passive players behind me, loose recreationals, so I'm happy to see a flop here. And indeed we go to a 5-way flop, 9-5 deuce rainbow. I would fold if anyone breathes at the pot now, but no one does. It checks through. Now the deuce pairs here, and again I'm kind of in the check fold mood, but now the loose recreational player and the cutoff makes it 15. The button calls, the other 2 players fold, and now I am getting 5-1 here. Obviously I don't think I'm good, but I'm thinking if I hit this one here against these 2 very passive players who would call anything basically, I just think I have a prize to call here. I'm really only playing for 2 outs, so I have about 4.5% to improve here, but I'm getting 5-1, and the implied odds I think are pretty good, so I just call here, and wow, look at this, we do get the 6, the full house on the river, and now this would be criminal not to lead out, so I have to donk here against these 2 players. I make it 80. The player in the cutoff now thinks for a while, and he looks really uncomfortable, but then he makes it 250. The button folds, and now I'm here at this point and I'm saying, okay, I lose to quad deuces and I lose to pocket nines, but I win against pocket fives and I beat any deuce that he might have, and he might have a lot of deuces. This is a really loose player, so I think, well, in this case I'm just gonna jam. Like, I mean, why not go all in here? And he snaps me off, but still looking very uncomfortable, and then I table my hand and he shows jack deuce here. So I mean, he really played it very, very poorly. I mean, first of all, calling 10 pounds pre-flop with jack deuce suited here is a big mistake. Then the turn bet, yep, that one's fine once you get to that point, but then he has to just call my river bet and not raise, and definitely not raise call, even though I gave him a very good price because he was quite shallow. So big mistake on his side. My gamble on the turn definitely paid off, and I was very happy here. The next one here is a typical live hand. I make it 10 under the gun, and we get called by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Excellent. So flop is actually not too bad. King high, and we have the nut flush draw, but definitely in no way me leading out here. Everyone actually checks behind. The queen of hearts here. Well, still checking mode. Everyone checks again. And now on the river, the king pairs again. And I'm thinking like no one probably has a king. They would have bet at some point here. So I just decide to put in a cheeky bet of 35 here, really saying, okay, I have the king, but I wasn't in a position to bet it before, and just hoping that everyone would fold even something like a queen. And just note, I do have bad blockers, but they're not bad in this case because there was no action post flop, so it's not like we would get any auto folds by someone folding diamonds here, because that just doesn't matter without any action. And indeed, nobody wants it. I take it down with my ace high bet on the river here, so quite happy about that. We have pocket aces again, so no complaints there, and this is a straddled pot. I raise it up to 15. Big blind calls and straddle calls. Queen 7-7 with a flush draw, not the best flop ever for us, but still betting here. We can get called by a lot of worse hands. Big blind calls and the straddle goes out of the way. Now, unfortunately, the flush comes in on the turn and the big blind leads out for almost half pot. It's annoying, but I'm not willing to let my hand go quite yet. This could still be a merger bet here with a queen, possibly even queen 10, maybe the ace of clubs with a queen or something like that. So I just have to call here, although I'm not super happy about it. And on the river, unfortunately, the 4 flush comes in, and he now checks, and I will definitely check behind. There is no way I can get called by worse now. And surprisingly, he shows up with pocket jacks and the jack of clubs. So we were actually good on the turn. He just took a stab there, which I think was very bad. Like, why on earth did he bet there on the 10 of clubs? But anyway, happy that he did not follow through on the river, although I would probably have folded anyway. So yeah, we lose this one against pocket jacks, but yeah, still I think I played it okay, and I'm happy I did not fold the turn. This was quite an interesting one. The cutoff makes it 7. He has a sizing tell. When he makes it 7, he has a weakish hand, and when he makes 11 or 12, then he has something like queens plus. So I know this is weak. I attack with queen 9 suited. He calls me this time, and we get this amazing flop here with a gut shot and the flush draw. So I lead out, or I bet quite big here on the button, and he now min clicks, which is very annoying, but still, obviously, with my hand, I'm not going anywhere. I was thinking of just trying to raise this one up, but you see, we are very deep. If we had been shallower, I would probably have raised this again here, 3-bet, and would have hoped to get it in against, well, not hoped, but would have hoped to get him off whatever nonsense he has, but I would have been okay getting in against something like Jack 10 or so. But because we're so deep, I elect to just call in position here, so this is fine. Now, unfortunately, the 10 pairs, he now makes it 60, and this is tricky because if he has something like pocket 8s or pocket deuces here, I'm drawing dead, but I was still not really ready to let my hand go, so I just called again here. And on the river, we improve. Well, we improve, but we don't really improve because all we beat now is the bluff or an 8. He checks behind. I was very briefly considering to go big here and try to get him off something, but I thought, well, he might be trapping here now with a 10 or so. Such a player, I don't really want to try to get him off a good hand, so I just checked behind and I was very surprised and relieved to see the a7 of diamonds, so we could have lost a big one here if the flush had come in, but we got very lucky to hit the 9 on the river and him not following through, so I win this one and I got very, very lucky. We open pocket tens under the gun, a weak player in the cutoff calls, and an unknown big blind. I just know that he is a bit of an older man. Beautiful flop, middle set here. I decide to go half pot on this board. I could probably even have gone 20 or 25, because I think there are a lot of ace-x hands and flush draws that can call here, and indeed both players do call. The 3 of spades here, no threat for me. I now decide to pot it and still just charge ace-x and flush draws, and the big blind calls, and annoyingly the flush comes in on the river, and this happens. He makes it 150 into 226, and I just don't think this can be anything that I beat. I mean, what kind of bluffs would he have? Maybe 8-9, but then would he really turn 8-9 into a bluff here when he hits the 8? I mean, it's possible, but I just didn't think he would. And then like King Jack, King Queen, Queen Jack, yes, it's possible, but would he really have called a pot-sized bet out of position on the turn without a flush draw, just the naked gut shot? I didn't think so. And would he lead here with ace 8? I didn't think he would, and so I figured this must most likely be a flush, and so I decided to fold my set. 2 more hands to go. Under the gun raises, cutoff calls, and we could squeeze with ace-jack suited, but I decide to only call here against this under the gun raise. Queen, queen 4, nothing good for us. I would check fold here, but it checks through. Now we have the ace. I would check call now. No reason to lead out, but it checks through again. And on the river, although the flush comes in, I'm quite confident to have the best hand, so this is a mandatory value bet. I go for a half pot, under the gun calls, and now cutoff makes it 40. This is such a small sizing, especially with the caller in between. It feels like we are beat here. I can't call, especially because under the gun could also still have a better hand than me that he slow played. So I just fold here. Under the gun folds as well. And then cutoff shows king queen. So this is a line that's taken by quite a few recreational players. They're just so afraid to lose their customers on the flop with trips that they just go into a shell and just check behind until the river, and then they wake up and raise you, so you can just easily fold in such a situation. Last hand of the day, and we have the ace-10 of hearts in the low jack. We raise to 10, hijack calls, button calls, and big blind calls. Jack 6-4 with 2 hearts, beautiful flop for us, but against 3 players I don't want to c-bet this, play it passively. Unfortunately the hijack doesn't agree, he makes it 3/4 pot here, the other 2 players fold, and I think I have to call here. I was considering check raising, but because he made it 75% here, I just think he has too many strong hands and I don't want to get it in against those, so I just call here. Now the turn helps me in the sense that I now have a pair, but it won't beat anything that he bet for value. But still, he now makes it 60 into 100, so it's 60% rather than 75% as he did on the flop. And on top of that, I now have a pair, so I think I have to call here. Without the 10, I think I would already fold here, but now I think I have a few more outs on top of the flush outs. Definitely all 3 10s are or the remaining 2 10s are good, and possibly or hopefully also the 3 aces are good. So I call here. The river brings the 9, making the board quite scary, doesn't improve us. We check, he checks behind, and we lose to queen jack offsuit, which, I mean, he played it well post-flop, but pre-flop he should never call 10 pounds, like, which is 5 big blinds in the hijack against the low jack raise. but still overall not unhappy with how I played this session. I got lucky a few times, unlucky a few times, but still I think overall we did quite well.
This is it for 2023. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more hands that I played, just click on the video above. Thank you. Bye.